What's going on, everybody? This is Chris from AppSumo with the Remote Work Academy, and today I am joined with Jordan. And Jordan is the remote work coach. Is that how you introduce yourself? What is the title you go by?
The remote job coach.
The
Important
remote
distinction, I
job
guess.
coach.
Only when
Yeah.
it comes to like where you're going to look website wise. That's important.
Yeah. Okay. We got it there. We do have a bunch of people pouring in. Knew it. Awesome. Let us know where you guys are tuning in from, where you're joining from. I'm in Austin, Texas. Jordan, you want to share where you're at?
Playa del Carmen in Mexico.
And you've
Yes,
been there
sir.
for how long now?
Well, this stint has been since early January, but I've been in Mexico for about 7 months out of the past year. And that's been all over Mexico, Oaxaca, Mexico City, Puerto Escondido, Cancun, Sam Kahane, what's up, buddy? All over Mexico. Mexico's a lovely country, man.
That's awesome. And let's see where people are pouring in from. We got Minnesota here. What's up, Minnesota? San Francisco, Northeast Texas, Playa del Carmen. All right. Make sure you set your comments to all panelists and attendees so everyone else can see. Right now it's just on, looks like it's on
Steve's
just
gonna
panelists.
I gotta say, Steve's gonna be so stoked that I got this mic because he always gives me shit for my audio. So taking care of that.
Awesome. All right. You guys are blowing up the comments. All right. Well, I got one more question for you before we get going and introduce everybody to Jordan. Are you guys already remote workers? Were you doing this before the recent situation? Is this something you're looking to learn more about, double down on? Let us know what your status is, what you're looking to learn and get out of this so we can really direct this conversation to help you guys. Doing this only for my side gig, learning more about remote work. Awesome. What's up, Jake? You always have your daughter in your car driving around for nap time. Good to see you again, man. Hope your productivity has skyrocketed since yesterday from the last one. Okay, freelancer, remote work gigs, looking for tips to find new jobs during COVID, searching for part-time remote work. All right, Jordan, you think we got enough information to help these people?
We got a little bit. I think we'll be all right.
Heck yeah. All right. Let me give you guys an introduction to Jordan to set the stage for what we're going to be going into. So Jordan has worked over 5 years remotely in the US while traveling internationally for a Fortune 50 company, startups, and his own businesses. He's lived in over 15 countries on 5 continents in the past 2 years and is a member of the Forbes Coaches Council. He creates content, courses, and coaching programs to help high performers learn a process to land legitimate remote jobs and gain freedom and flexibility in their lives. He also helps companies adopt remote work policies or virtualize their business by hiring remote talent. So Jordan is the man that you want to learn from to start kicking ass at the remote game. And let's hear, Jordan, a little bit about like what brought you here. Have you just since you started working, you've been doing remote? Were you doing kind of 9 to 5s in offices? What did it look like for you?
Yeah, great question. And I appreciate you having me on, Chris, first and foremost. Thank you so much for allowing me to share this story and share this information. It's really important to me. I'm incredibly passionate about it. So starting out, I worked in corporate. I'm from the Bay Area. I studied marketing. I took the very safe path. Went into big corporate at IBM. Worked at IBM for 4 years. And when I first started working at IBM, I worked in their Boston, Massachusetts office. And the first time I worked remotely was because it was the worst winter that Boston had had in 10 years.
Shout out to
the
Boston,
snow was,
my hometown.
the shit was coming down, man. And you couldn't, and I'm a boy from California, so you expect me to try to drive out there an hour and a half to an office, gonna have some problems.
Happen.
So I woke up to a message one day that was like, hey, it's a snow day, stay at home. And my entire paradigm changed. I was like, this is actually possible. And it was initially like a buffer for me to sleep in longer before my calls, to just kind of be a little bit more lazy. But the turning point for me was realizing I could actually use this to, one, be more productive, be more healthy, build out the lifestyle and the schedule that I wanted. And I became addicted to the freedom and flexibility that remote work provided. And that was in 2014. So for me, what I did then was negotiate my work to be remote. After that snow had passed, we started coming back into the office. And then I ended up negotiating every Friday to be remote. at that time. And it went from there to full-time remote. And over the course of those years from 2014 to now, I've worked, like you said, it's almost like I wrote that intro. It was like so good. I've worked for startups ranging from 2 people to 400 people to 10 people. And then I've worked for a company that's 400,000 people. So I've gotten a weird, interesting perspective of how remote works at all those levels of companies, which for me is a great way to be able to share information, because each time that I got those jobs, it was not through the traditional application process. And I think we're going to talk a little bit about that today, but that's my answer to that question.
Awesome. Let me dig in a little bit on some of those pieces. So was this just a one day work from home while you're at IBM? Is that where it started, or was it like a series of days?
Yeah. So obviously when the snow was happening, it would be elongated to whenever the snow wasn't happening. But then after that, we were coming to the office still 5 days a week. And the other 2 trainees that I was living with, we ended up negotiating with our manager to work just Fridays. So then for that first 9 to 10 months, it was only Fridays. And then after that, I moved back to California, and it started becoming 4 days a week, 5 days a week sometimes, depending on if I wanted to go into an office. But it was an option, which was great.
What did that conversation look like? Where you're like, hey, we were able to be efficient during the snow day. Can we do that once a week?
Yeah, well, I think it helped that being in training, you didn't have a ton of pressure to perform. So Let me talk about it from a broad perspective for someone who's maybe a little bit further along that wants to negotiate that. There are a lot of different pieces to a good remote work proposal. Part of that is contingency planning for the things that might happen. So if you have certain things that need to be done in an office, you need to think about, like, what are all the things that I need to mitigate? What are all the risks that I need to mitigate for my company, and outline all of those. You also need to make it a benefit for the company, because a lot of companies, when they are approached by you to do remote work, they'll see you as just wanting to work remotely, and they're not seeing the benefit. So a lot of what we're going to talk about today is centered around that mindset, where remote work really needs to be about the company benefiting, not solely about you benefiting. And that's one of the biggest mistakes that I see people when they're looking for remote work. How they send their messaging to these companies needs to be tweaked a little bit.
Yeah, no, I think that's a major important point for not just this, but for really any conversation or negotiation in life, is you need to look at it through the other person's point of view and think about, like, how are they seeing this? What are they afraid of? Why would they say no to this? And then being able to address all of those points in the way you're approaching it. Because I think in a situation like this, your employer is inherently going to be thinking that you're just doing this for a benefit for you, not for them. But if you're coming in right off the bat and you're kind of addressing all of the benefits they're going to get out of it, then you're able to paint the right picture and frame it properly in their minds.
100%. And even let's use the examples in the chat here. So Monte was saying, Monte, I'm not sure exactly how to say it when it just ends with an A. Hopefully I'm saying it right. But so this is a great example, because this is seriously something, if you're allergic to something in the office, right? Like that has to do with you. And here's the thing, the switch here is that when you talk to your company about something like that, it's saying, hey, like, yes, this is about me and my health, but the flip is I can't be productive and deliver X output to the company, which impacts the bottom line, which is why I should be remote. It's not, unfortunately, and this is unfortunate, that it's not enough for some companies that you have like a health issue. They need, when they're taking it up the chain to people that maybe have the full authority to say yes or no, they need to say, what's the impact on the business? And the bigger thought there is, like, if we let this person go remote, then are we going to have to answer to everybody else? So that's where the empathy comes into place here of how you can really step into what the companies are seeing and really try to change that messaging.
Yeah. Well, and what's so, I don't know if incredible is the right word, but about what's going on right now is, for you were able to kind of set the stage by having that snow day where you worked remote, where the company could test it out. Right now, just about everybody is able to get this use case, this case study where it's like, hey, we were working remote, or we are working remote for this period of time. You've seen how that changed in terms of, like, my productivity. And if your productivity isn't going up, now is a great time to really to be able to show that you can work remotely. And I would love to hear your thoughts on that. How, because I imagine I think when we were talking before about this conversation is like, you need to set the stage. You can't just decide today I'm going to go talk to my boss and negotiate remote work. It's like, there's a lot of pre-work that gets up to that conversation. So I'd love to kind of dig into that more.
Everything within this sphere starts with your leverage. Mm-hmm. What leverage do you have? And that has to be driven by KPIs and metrics. Mm-hmm. Companies need to see that in order to, and this goes not only for people who are negotiating remote, but if you're looking at starting a new job with a company remote, what leverage do you bring from past companies that you worked at? What benefits have you provided to them? Hard numbers. The more you can quantify, the better, right? So when you're looking at a company and saying, okay, well, I want to go remote, what's my leverage? You have to be able to measure. So this time, like you said, is so good to start figuring out, how do we take a mindset of input? Input, the way that you look at it is, I work 9 to 5. My input is, an 8-hour workday. How do we switch from that to what's the output? Mm-hmm. What are the things that I'm doing that the company is benefiting from, and how do they measure that? So that's a conversation to have with your manager. It's like, hey, I know this whole COVID thing is happening, and especially people that might go to the office after this, like after it's all over, they might be forced back into the office. The conversation with their manager should be, what is it that we can measure within my output and how I'm actually impacting the organization that we can use to determine what your leverage is, right? And you're not going to necessarily say the leverage part to them, but what you're trying to figure out is, how do they view whether you're being successful in your role or not? And some people, unfortunately, they have a role that's a little bit more difficult to measure those types of things. Salespeople, for instance, easy, right? Because they've got quotas and they've got, certain revenue targets that are directly attributed to them as an individual contributor or a sales director or whatever it is. But then if it's someone else who has a more, let's say, qualitative impact on the business, we have to figure out how to quantify those. And if you can go to your manager with that conversation, they're going to be happy, because they're going to be able to see, okay, well, we can actually justify, this kind of remote work. And what you want to do is get a sponsor, like get someone within your organization who can help you, take that remote work forward with those metrics that you've established.
And what do you think about not even necessarily waiting until you go back to work, but like using this time to have that conversation? If you're still working remotely now, like if you don't feel like you have those KPIs and metrics, having a call, like setting up a call now with your boss or your manager and just 100%. Being like, hey, I want to make sure we're on the same page here. I want to be as effective as possible. I know a lot of things are going on. I was thinking, like, being proactive and being like, I was thinking the best metric for me to be tracking right now would be whether it's like clicks on an ad or it's the number of designs that you're putting out or whatever, getting their approval on it. And now you can track that until you go back to work. And then you can use that, like you're saying, as your leverage. You've been storing up data for days or weeks or maybe months. And now you can use this to be like, hey, I was working remote for 3 months and this is the output that I had. And comparing that to what it's been like at the office or, previously, like you can see that it's better.
Yeah. And that's a fantastic point. And to Sarah in the comments here, my question to you is, within the organization and the marketing that you're doing, what do you guys track? Mm-hmm. And a lot of this, unfortunately, it also depends on like how open and receptive your manager is to these kind of conversations, right? So like, the better your manager is and the more of an advocate they are for you, you need to show up as a good employee first and foremost. Like you need to.
It all really starts there. If you're not good at what you're doing, you got to get better at it.
And this is a sidebar, but I've talked to so many people who, because of this pandemic, feel entitled to a remote job. They've never worked remotely before. They've not been a great employee, and they feel entitled, like they just deserve a remote job. You have to have this leverage. You have to be a good employee. That's why a lot of this stuff usually starts before something like this happens, so that you have a brand. And we'll talk about those, the 3 biggest parts, which I think we should get into at some point. Mm-hmm. But yeah, so Sarah, if you're tracking the engagement and ROI metrics, and you can have a conversation, like a very transparent conversation with your manager about all this stuff, like ask for their recommendation. It's like, give them a proactive thing, like, hey, we're tracking engagement ROI in this particular KPI. I think that we should measure it in the next 2 months, whatever it is, and compare that to when I was in the office. Like if you can come up with that yourself, and there's a couple templates out there, and we can send those out afterwards.
Awesome.
But there's a couple of really good templates out there for putting together this conversation. But I think the more proactive you can be in the conversation by telling them, this is what I think we should do, you give them a chance to add input, and you're also showing your initiative.
Mm-hmm.
If you just go to them and say, hey, what should we do? It's like you're adding more work. Everything within this whole remote work sphere is like, try to add less work to the people around you. You try to make it easier, try to make it a benefit. And that's a mindset shift that you have to have.
Yeah. And it's a very similar conversation, it sounds like, than if you're going in for a raise. It's like you don't just walk into your manager's office and demand a $10,000 raise. It's like, why would they give that to you? But if you go in and you're like, hey, I want to make sure we're on the same page, and I want to make sure I'm as valuable as possible to the company. These are the next 3 projects I was thinking I could work on that would do that. These are the metrics we would track. What do you think about that? Like that's so, like, as somebody who manages people, that would be so valuable to me. If somebody comes up and they're just like, hey, this is exactly what I'm thinking about. I've already figured out all of the details. I just need your sign off. It's like, oh, you mean you're already going to do this? I don't have to tell you to do things. You already have the whole plan laid out. Like, if you do this well, that makes me look good. And then I want to give more things to you. So you keep making me look good. And looking at it from your manager's point of view, like what did they want out of it? As opposed to thinking you want to work remotely. What will they get out of you working remotely?
Yeah, no, that's huge. And you doing that upfront work, giving them a chance to just say yes or no, right? like if the next step of the process is making them contribute work to this whole thing, you've done it wrong. You need to give them everything they need to just say yes. Like, make it easy. That goes along with everything. That goes along with job searching too. And I want to make this important point. An effective remote job search in the way that you show up as a candidate should always be to be making a hiring manager or a recruiter's job easy. Should never be making a recruiter or hiring manager's job harder. And the switch here is like, a lot of job seekers feel like a burden. They feel like, if I follow up too much, I'm going to be a burden to this person. I understand there's this COVID thing is happening, but the reality is there are companies that are hiring right now, and they're sifting through thousands of resumes because there's millions of people in the job market now, especially in the US, but globally, like, this has been a really big hit on employment for people. But here's the thing. You can make a hiring manager or recruiter's job easier by being a fucking great candidate. I'm not sure if I can swear, but I did.
Go for it.
Cool. So the mindset shift there is like, the way that you show up in a job search is to help them. And you do that by being their number one choice. And if you believe in your heart of heart, like you're the right candidate, you will act that way, and it will show up in the integrity and the way that you conduct yourself.
So how do you recommend somebody doing that? Or let's just take it a bit more high level. What's like the first step in this process that you recommend for people? So they come to you and they're like, hey, I want to get a remote job. Where are you like, okay, step 1, we need to start here.
Step 1, make sure that you want a remote job.
What are some reasons you wouldn't want one?
If you work better in an office environment, there's a learning curve. Here's what I didn't know when I first started. There's a learning curve. There's a learning curve to working remotely. There's a learning curve to a job search that is, instead of in person, is remote. So if you work better in an office, I don't think there's like stay in an office, right? Like, and if you enjoy that, if you enjoy the collaboration, if you enjoy the camaraderie, and there are people that would prefer to commute a little bit. Maybe it's not a big commute, but they go to an office where they've got free lunch and they've got, beer on tap, and they've got people to talk to, and that's where they get their social time. Maybe they want to get out of the house, like, I totally understand that. So it starts with self-awareness, and it carries through self-awareness wise to what you could do remotely. Because a lot of the people that I talk to are not certain. And here's where we go into some of the mistakes. Before I tell you what they should do, let me tell you what you shouldn't do, because I think that that's even more important. What you shouldn't do is be too generalized, that you are a quote unquote jack of all trades. That is the worst. No company wants someone that can do things half good. Companies are looking for specific roles because they want someone who's really good at that role. And they're going to hire someone who they think is competent in that particular role that they're hiring for. So the more that you say, I'm a jack of all trades, I could do, marketing, and I can do sales, and I can do some of the operational stuff. And like, here's the thing, like if you're advertising to everybody, you're advertising to nobody. So really getting in the mindset of getting targeted, that's the first thing that people do wrong, is they go too generalized and they say, oh, I could do all of these different jobs. Second is they prioritize quantity over quality. So they think that this whole thing is just a big numbers game. If I send out enough resumes, I'll eventually get an interview. There is no correlation. And in fact, it's probably a reverse correlation to the fact that if you send out 100 resumes and you don't get any answers, it's the same thing as sending out 0 resumes. It's the same thing. And it's actually worse because you're ruining first impressions with people that are seeing the way that you're showing up. So those are a couple of quick things. And then again, we talked a little bit about framing their messaging. So if the way that you currently frame your messaging is all about you, I need a job, like I need this job. Like if that's how you're showing up in your job interview, companies are not going to want you. Think about it from a company perspective. They want someone to come in and do the job right. They want to trust the person. They want to like the person. They want a culture fit. Everything that you do communication-wise needs to articulate why you're a benefit for that company, why they should like you, and why you're the right fit.
Awesome. And I do want to touch on that jack of all trades thing, because I think that's a really important thing in this space. And as someone who considers himself, a jack of all trades when it comes to digital marketing, I still think like if you're going out for a job, or when I've done consulting in the past, it's still important to be like, what is your upfront offer? Either like look at your history. What are the things you've done that are most impressive, or what are the things that this company could use most? So maybe, you can do everything. You can do landing pages and designs and emails and funnels, but maybe you see that their emails are the thing that like you could help out the most with. So you frame your resume and you frame your offer and you frame yourself as like, hey, I am an email marketing expert. That's the thing that I do. Here is my history that paints that story. And then once you prove that, you can open up your kind of toolbox of jack of all trades and being like, hey, we already crushed email. By the way, I don't know if you know this, I also do sales pages or sales funnels or whatever it is. Beautiful. But you need to lead with one thing and then be really good at that. And then you can expand out on like, it's like what you were saying with the idea of like, if you're marketing to everybody, you're marketing to nobody. It's like, you need to know who the one customer is that's going to buy your product. Other people are going to buy the product, but you need to target it.
Chris, I love that, man. That's so good. You're taking the words from me on this. Are you?
I'm just, you're leading. Well? I'm filling some stuff in. No, that's super helpful. I really, cause that's something I struggled with a long time. It's like you want to do everything, and it's like, people don't want you to do everything. They want you to do one thing that's on their plate. That's a pain point.
So the interesting part about this, I have a client. He's, I think 48, 50 years old, and wide range of skills. Wide range. He's done so many different things. Like most of us, we are like multi-potentialites. We like a lot of different things. We can do a lot of different things, and that's great. But in a job search, you have to be very specific, like you said. Once you're in, the way you can exponentially improve your value, and this is what I was telling him because he was not being as targeted, the way that you can exponentially improve your value is once you're on the inside, do like you said, right? Like, hey, I don't know if you know this, but I can do landing pages too. All of a sudden, now you're working with a cross-functional team. You're helping the company build out another revenue stream. You're helping operations. And now you're getting internal experience, and now you've improved your value. You can use that on a later pivot if you need it. Chris, I think you should tell about your experience doing that and how you got your job, because I think that that's such a good example of like how this non-traditional system works.
Yeah, I mean, so in this also sparked an idea of somebody who works at AppSumo right now. Shout out to Spencer. So Spencer came on and he to do business development, but he also does video. And so after he got the job, he said to the video team, he's like, "Hey, I also like editing videos, and you guys do a lot of videos. If you want to throw one on my plate a week, I can work on that." And so now that's just another thing that he's doing, which is awesome. And so I saw somebody said, "How do you pick one thing?" I think kind of the two things are like, what do you actually think you're best at? And if you don't know, ask your friends, ask previous people you worked with, or just look at your resume, like look at your history of work. What stands out as the most impressive thing? And that can be, I mean, that shouldn't be too difficult, I don't think, unless you really are just so good. And if that's the problem that you're having, then it's like just pick one of them, because it also depends on the company that you're going after. Like, where would you be able to apply, again, the most leverage? It all comes down to leverage. So yeah, I mean, those are some of the things yeah, in terms of my story, I didn't come on AppSumo to host remote series. It's like I came on, what did I originally come on? As doing operations and helping set up deals and helping do some of the copy and things like that. But then once I was in, it kind of expanded out from there and new projects popped up.
But
and I was like,
before that,
I can take that. Before that, what was
how
I
did
doing?
you get in?
How did I get in? I was working in finance in Boston, just like you. And I reached out to a startup in Boston that was looking to do kind of like an online series, reached out to them. And there was also another author that I reached out to, kind of just offering free work. And I think that's another kind of element that ties into this too. Offered to work for them for free. And then just one connection led to another project, which led to a guy that I was helping him with his book and his online courses. Then we launched it on AppSumo. I was like an AppSumo partner. And then I ended up getting an offer to work at AppSumo. And it was just one thing led to another. But it was, it was very like hyper specialized, even though I was doing a lot of different things behind the scenes.
And a lot of people aren't going to like to hear this, but you got your job because you offered the value first and it was free.
Mm-hmm.
You said, "Hey, I'll work for you for free." Right now, in this time of COVID, you know how many companies are struggling with payroll? You know how amazing it would be if they got someone with a certain skill set that offered something for free to them?
Mm-hmm.
It's a simple thing that you could do that could really get you to the inside to making a relationship that could be, just like happened for you, the inside to AppSumo.
Mm-hmm.
And the closer you can get to those very specific people in those very specific companies that are able to maybe get you a leg up. Like, this is all what the non-traditional application process is like. You didn't go through the traditional application process with that. Mm-hmm. You had a contact who was like, here's your job, right? And that's what I try to preach to people, is that the moment that you send a cold resume on a cold job board or an easy apply on LinkedIn, you don't know anybody at the company, you might as well have not sent it.
Mm-hmm.
70% or more of people don't even get past the first qualified round through the application tracking systems, that these things are looking for certain keywords. Like, don't even bother with that. Your resume should always be directly going to somebody, or you should have a warm intro to someone who can send it. So that's a big part of this. And I do want to get to a couple of these questions because there's a few in here.
Yeah, go for it.
The picking the one thing, Artem, and Artem's actually my roommate. So he's
What's up,
in
Artem?
Starbucks right now. He's a great guy. So Artem, how you pick that one thing, I think everybody intuitively can probably pick a couple of things that they're good at, right? That they've proven themselves in, or they have some experience in. And here's where I see the biggest mistake, is that job seekers use their own words to describe themselves and to describe what they're looking for. Here's what I say to do instead. Go on to some of these remote job boards, see what listings are out there, and look at the exact phrases and words that are in these job descriptions. See which ones are parallel to the words you might use about yourself, and then start to figure out, what are the patterns I'm seeing within the activities and daily tasks and things that I like to do versus the job descriptions that are out there already. And what are they calling these roles? Am I seeing any patterns here? And you can use these remote job boards just as kind of a research tool. Also, when you're going through those remote job search tools, guess what else you find? Companies that are hiring remotely. You should be keeping track of all these companies that you're finding that have these interesting roles or have interesting missions. Part of this whole targeting thing is not blasting out resumes to everybody. It's picking a few targeted companies, getting really close to the relationships that will help you get a sponsor and or talk directly to them. And then through those relationships and creative thinking, creative follow-up, which is all things that I teach in my programs, that's where you're going to get the interviews. That's where you're going to get the jobs. That's where you're going to have a leg up on everybody else.
Awesome. Getting a lot of props. Steve said, so smart. Joe said, I am thoroughly enjoying the talk so much so far. You guys are amazing. Hopefully
Thanks,
you enjoy it all the way to the end. What do you think about doing, do you ever like tell people to do, what would you call it? Like kind of do an outreach before you even apply for a job? Like say finding somebody from that company on LinkedIn and just being like, would love to have a conversation about this.
I wouldn't do it that way, but every time.
How would you do it?
Every time again, this is the point of the non-traditional application process. You're not sending an application and a resume unless you have at least tried to connect with someone at the company. Now, there's two types of people. There's people that are either doing the type of job that you want to do. They're kind of at your peer level, or they're within the team, they're within the organization somewhere that would have direct peer status with you. The second type of person is a hiring manager or recruiter, a person who has direct decision-making authority of if you get the job or not. Those two types of people, the way you're going to talk to them is very different. Now, what I say is an interesting way to approach this is find personal ways that you can interact with these people, whether through the communities that they're already a part of, information that they make available online, or ways that you can relate to them through their education or interests or whatever. And that's why LinkedIn is so important, because some of these people post on LinkedIn. So what's a really easy thing you can do? Let's talk about what we call the 5x5x5 strategy, which I said I would share. So I want to make good on that. So 5x5x5 is taking time to go through your LinkedIn, unfollow 5 people that are irrelevant in your feed. Because what you'll notice about LinkedIn is that, especially if you've added a lot of different people over the years, kind of gets irrelevant sometimes. So you need to clean this. Social media feeds are a direct reflection of us. They're just the digital version of the world and environment we've created. Sometimes that environment is not conducive to our goals. So how do you create a feed that is conducive to a job search? You need to add the right people. So 5 unfollows, 5 connections to people that are either within one of those two camps, right? There's someone who is working remotely, someone that's within the job role that you want, someone that's in hiring power. And then the last 5 is leave 5 thoughtful comments. Because LinkedIn is really good at showing comments to other people. What's been interesting about when I leave a really thoughtful comment and I get 5-10 likes on it, it's not the likes that matter. It's the fact that people have seen me outside of a second or third network because their connection liked my comment. I've literally gotten clients from leaving a comment. You can literally get a job by leaving a comment because it shows your expertise. It shows that you're part of the conversation. And again, this needs to be a thoughtful comment. It needs to be a good comment. So not just, anything that you throw out there, but that's the 5x5x5. And if you do that every day, it's the micro actions that lead up to the bigger picture of actually getting a job.
I love that. Yeah, that's super smart. And it's something that everybody can do. You can do it at any point in your kind of job search process where it doesn't have to be like you've narrowed it down to one company. You can kind of be doing this and you're putting out feelers and just like making your network bigger and giving yourself more options.
Yeah, 100%. So we got a bunch of questions in here. I want to make sure we get to those. So one of them was tailoring resume. So Jake had asked about that. Resume tailors should be for the specific job roles. So you have one for, maybe it's marketing director, you have one for marketing analyst. So if those are I recommend really only targeting, if you can get down to one role, only target one role. But if you have more than one, 2 or 3 is probably the max. And then you want a resume for each one of those that has the selected achievements at the top of the things that are very connected to that type of job role. What you should do is look at different descriptions for those specific job roles, and you should find those trends. Again, those patterns. What are the words that are showing up here a lot? What are the requirements that are showing up a lot? What are the job duties and roles? And how do I connect my experience and very quantifiable achievements to their exact words? Exactly. And then specifically, you'd have a cover letter that would go to each company. And again, these things you are sending directly to people. You're not sending them to an ATS. You're not just sending them out in the cold universe to the abyss to be found. You don't want people finding your resume. You want people looking for it. That's the distinction. Not just finding it. You want them looking for it. It's like, okay, I have to go find Jordan's resume in my system instead of, oh, I just found this resume in my system. It looks okay. You know?
That's awesome. Do you have you ever had people who do like video resumes or things like that, or like video outreach?
Yes, 100%. Highly recommend it. Very few people are doing that. You can use tools like Loom. You can use and this is kind of going to mirror your cover letter, right? So, and you're going to want to send that in again directly to people. So if you can find people's emails, I think it's great to send that via email or within your follow-up. You can use that as well.
Steve's wondering about scented resumes.
Yeah,
depends on how good your cologne is. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. What kind of, I don't know. Yeah. If you could find out what's their favorite smell, and then add some lavender to your resume. I mean, maybe
perfect.
Oh, speaking of smell, so my girlfriend, you know those like sage thing. This is totally off topic. You know those sage things. She did like a whole like she cleaned the energy in my room yesterday.
Nice.
The whole place smells like smoke. It's just it's awful. So shout out to my girlfriend. She's awesome. But we didn't realize it was gonna smell like the whole room smelled like smoke.
Perfect. Nice. Yeah, that sounds like my cooking. Yeah. The other thing, what about having what would you call it? So it's funny. The way I got connected with AppSumo, the course that I was, working as a partner on was with Charlie Hone, and the course was called, I think it was like Land the Job You Want or something like that. So that's actually what got me connected with AppSumo. And one of the things that Charlie talks about, he has a book, Recession Proof Graduate, and he also did an online course on this, is what he calls like a portfolio, where a lot of people have resumes, but if you build like an online portfolio, which is just like basically a landing page with some of your accomplishments, you could put this video on it, and it's just like, I guess, thinking of all of the things that people are normally doing and going like one step beyond that, or creating a little bit more friction between you and all of the other people who are applying. So if they're submitting a paper resume, you're submitting a video resume. If they're submitting, or a cover letter, if they're submitting a resume, you're submitting like a website portfolio of different projects. Yep. I mean, what are your thoughts on things like that?
I love it. First thing, all the steps of the process just have one goal. And your initial step in the process is just look different than everybody else. If you can just accomplish that, then maybe you get a little bit longer look than 5 seconds on your resume. And then the next goal is like, you need to have things in your resume that get you an interview. And then the next goal beyond the interview is get the next interview. People try to hit the home run from the start, right? And it's like, you're not going to ask someone to marry you before you've asked them on a date. So take it one step at a time and understand. My analogy is this. You are a company. You yourself, a company has a brand. So the marketing, the way that you put yourself out there. So that's going to be the resume, your online personal brand, those types of things. You have a product. That's like the work that you do, the actual tangible, like physical product that you do. If you think of yourself as a company and the way that you market is to the customer are the remote companies that you're trying to get jobs with. You have to market to them the right way. You have to get their attention. You got to break the monotony in whatever the communication channels are, and you have to stand out, right? Competitive differentiation. You have to figure out, how are you different? How are you unique? The more that you can think about it as the company and allow yourself to take some risks, be creative. Totally, this is a great move. I think of it that the bigger point that Charlie sounds like he's getting at is that you need to be available online. Like if I search your name, what's going to show up? And how does that compare to the 1,000, 1,500 other people that are going for the same job? What's going to show up? Because companies are doing that. They're not like, we're not living in this vacuum bubble where people don't research you beforehand. And with a remote job, like they're going to base, whether it's fair or not, we all have a personal brand. And they're going to base their opinion of you on what they find when they search you. It's going to be on LinkedIn. It's going to be on Google. So Google yourself, see what shows up. Would you hire you if you did that exercise?
Yeah, I love that. In continuing with that, you're a company analogy. It's like, well, companies have websites and companies don't put every single product they've ever created or worked on that website. It's like you need to tailor it to what are you really trying to get in
Right.
front of whoever you're going after. It's like you don't need to have your high school job on there if you're in your 30s. You don't have to have like this random project that you worked on. You're crafting a narrative. You can take pieces out or put pieces in to appeal directly to the job that you're trying to get. And this is why, like you said, narrowing down to like a specific company and being hyper targeted. Because if you're going for an email marketing job or something like that, you don't need to have all of these peripheral projects on there because that just skews the messaging that you're trying to deliver.
100%. I think you're right on there. And Chris, I'm wondering, we still have like a bunch of questions in here. Is it
good to get to
those? Okay. So I'm looking up, and the last one that I answered was about the tailoring resume. How does one find out the biggest pain point of a company? So company research this is why quality over quantity is so important, because when you choose quality, you can go really deep. Go really deep. I recommend signing up for company newsletters, following them on LinkedIn. I recommend getting any piece of communication that they're sending to their clients. You should be getting that too, right? You should be going on Google News, going on Glassdoor, finding out everything. And it doesn't have to take that long. Like to set all this up takes 10 minutes, if that. You set up Google Alerts, whatever. But when you look into what the company's actually doing and they have certain things that they make public on their website, or they may have some certain things in the news, you can figure out what initiatives they have going on. That's where you can make assumptions or guesses about where you could be beneficial. And companies, a lot of times, just for the fact that you have researched that far, will appreciate that. Think about every company on social media. This is like a super guerrilla hack. Every company has social media, right? Pretty much. When you think about how many comments does AppSumo get on each of their Instagram posts?
Oh God, I don't know, 20, 30, something like that.
Okay. So here's what I'm getting at. If you were one of the 20 or 30 people who was consistently commenting on their Instagram, sharing their feeds, and then when it came time to actually apply to a job, you think it would be interesting if you were one of the only people that they saw consistently engaging with their social media?
Yeah, I mean, we know who those people are. Like we talk about those people at the company. We're like, oh yeah, this guy. Like we always see him here in the Facebook group, or see that there's a guy Lazar who I've seen in every single one of these videos that I've done for this remote work series. And so
Exactly.
I know who he is. You pick up on these things.
So we're all human. Subconsciously, what you're doing is you're creating familiarity. You're creating a digital familiarity of someone. Subconsciously, they know your name. And that's the cool thing, because when it comes time to find a creative into the company, like you said, you've already talked about this guy. So if there was some connection for me to be able to get you to talk to the hiring manager, you might say, oh, like I've actually heard of that guy. He's been like creating massive value in our groups. He's always asking good questions. He's liking all our posts. He's sharing. He knows the AppSumo brand. And you think they're going to choose someone who's doing that? If all things are equal, they're going to choose someone who's doing that over someone who's not.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things we were talking about on a different video, but the idea of just like doing the work beforehand and approaching with that. So say like AppSumo is hiring a copywriter. If instead of applying for a copywriter, you're like, hey, I saw this deal copy that you put out recently. I actually reworked it. Here's a Google Doc with all of the improvements I would have done if I had written this. It's like, are you kidding me? If it's between that and somebody who submitted a resume as a copywriter, it's like this one takes you no time to put together with your resume. You spend 2 hours working on the copy. You're 10 times better off than the other person. It could be the same thing if you see like all of these flaws in their website. You could record a screencast and be like, hey, I've been doing web design for the past 5 years. These are the top 5 things I would change instantly if you want. I'm happy to actually do that for free over the course of the next 2 weeks, just so like we can see if it's a good fit working together. It's like it takes twice as much effort, but gets 10 times the results.
Quality over quantity. Because again, sending 100 resumes and applications cold and not getting any responses is the same as sending 0. And again, it's actually worse. So it gets you the same results, and it gets you even more frustration and ruining any first impressions. I love that. I love that you brought that up. And this is all about creativity. This is all about you figuring out how you can be of value. And value comes down to a few things that all of us can share. One of those things is information. You can share information with people that you have that you think would help them. The second is introductions. You know people that other people don't know. Maybe there's an introduction that you can give. So have those things as like right front and center. And then you also have ideas. So if you, like you said, if you had ideas of how they can improve their site and you sent that to someone, it's super valuable.
Because that goes to the same thing we were talking about before. If you're like going into negotiating remote work with your manager, it's like you want to have the ideas for the projects that you're going to work on. And that's even more important if you're applying for a job because you don't necessarily have a strong relationship with that company. So if you're already saying, if you hire me, these are the things that I'm going to do, it's like, great. Now I don't have to figure out what to do with you if I hire you.
100%. Yeah, you're giving them, again, this goes back to what we said, you're giving them the easy way to say yes or no, right? Like you're making it easier for people. If your life is built upon making other people's lives easier, they will recognize that value and they will want to be around you more. And that means hiring you. There's a question that I think we can answer, two different questions with one answer. One of those is from Travis, who asks about not wanting to be employed full-time, but get a remote contract. That's actually a large portion of remote hiring, especially if it's international with distributed companies, because a lot of times they don't have a headquarter where some of the people are. So they're hiring freelancers. There's another guy from India who had asked about getting a job. So there's a lot of times where being freelance or taking on contracts is going to be a better choice for you, just because of the implications of if a company doesn't have that headquarters there, it makes their hiring process a lot more difficult. They have to involve a third party. So you might find that in all these remote job boards, like most of them, you can filter by contract basis. So it'll show you contract basis. It's also on LinkedIn. You can filter that way too. I just had a LinkedIn video that I put out on YouTube that talks about different things you can do specifically on LinkedIn. So shameless plug to my YouTube, which we should send out.
What is your YouTube?
And then,
how can people find that?
YouTube.com/Jordan Carroll. 2 R's, 2 L's.
Awesome.
Putting out a lot more content on this kind of stuff. So I'm always open to hearing what would be valuable. Another part of this, you talked about doing unique things. So here's a unique. So on Monday, I'm starting a series where I'm doing some lives, and we're going to have to go on at some point, Chris, together. You'll have to come on my live.
All right, man.
It's remote weekly spotlight. So on Mondays, I'm going to be interviewing, leaders in the remote industry, people that are experts in the industry, people who've done amazing things to work remotely. And my guest on Monday is the CEO and co-owner of MailerLite, which is a company that does email marketing. They don't even take CVs. And we're going to talk about that on Monday on why, but they make people download their software, use their product, and they submit through a sequence that they have to create through the email marketing platform. So here's where I'm getting at, is that if a company doesn't require you to use their product to apply, consider how you could use their product to apply. Or consider consider what you could do with their product to show them that you actually care and and this is going to your thing about the website, right? It's like if you're a web designer and you show them their site and you say, here's 5 things I'd fix immediately, like you're providing tremendous value. So I think that's a huge thing that people could take from this.
Yeah, absolutely. The site that I use for that portfolio is it's Strikingly, which I believe it's still free and it's pretty easy. I think you can even set it up to connect with your LinkedIn and it will just like populate a visual resume for you and then you can edit that. So yeah, strikingly.com, you can check it out there. So yeah, I think that's a really, really cool idea. If you guys have any more questions for Jordan, we got a bit more time left. So put those in the chat. I got a couple here. So what's the most efficient way to find out a company's pain point?
Oh yeah, we talked about that one. That was like going into the research stuff. So we did cover that one. Using their product, signing up for all communications. Like if they have a newsletter, sign up for that. Any sort of customer communication that you can be a part of, you need to know what's going on. Search Google News, Glassdoor, figure out what their initiatives are, look on their websites. Steve's hilarious. Any other questions that we didn't cover at the top?
I see one. Do you recommend mentioning that you have a legal work visa in untapped markets?
In untapped, where is that one?
Oh, it's in the Q&A. It's not in the chat.
Okay, gotcha. So anything that you think that you should call out, whether that, like if it's going to come up in a job interview or something, say that that's an elongated, what do you call it? Like if you've not worked for like a year, for instance, like you know that's going to come up on a job interview. You want to state that on your cover letter. So the same thing would apply if there's some sort of visa thing. If there's something that the company should know, you want to call that out like in your cover letter and use it to your advantage. Like spin it positively somehow, or tell them, like it's almost like answering objections. So this is the same thing as thinking about you being a company, right? People will have objections to wanting to work with you or buy your product or whatever. So if you're a company and you're smart, you're seeing those objections before they happen and you're handling them before they happen.
Yeah, I love that. The probably my favorite book that I read in the past year is Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, who's a former FBI negotiator. And one of the big things that he talks about is the accusation audit, which is he talks about basically like if there's an elephant in the room, you don't just keep ignoring it. You just go, hey, there's an elephant in the room, and you bring it up, and then you can address it and move past it. So getting ahead of whatever these objections could be. If you've been out of work, you don't want to be like, hey, like, I know it might look really bad. Like, get ahead of it and be like, you probably think that, I wasn't working or I wasn't doing these things or I lost all my skills. You probably think I wouldn't be a good employee. And you're saying all this stuff and you think that it's going to have the reverse impact. But in fact, you're diffusing it in their mind because they're thinking it. You're saying it out loud, and then they can be like, oh, you know what? Maybe that is a little too much. Maybe I don't need to be thinking that. As opposed to what's the example he uses? It's like whenever you go on like a talk show and you're like, no, I don't want to sound like an asshole, but it's like, you sound like an asshole. But if you're like, listen, I know I'm going to sound like an asshole saying this, but, and then you're like, it wasn't that bad. You didn't really sound like it was a little mean, but, so yeah, I think like you're saying, get ahead of these things. Don't wait for them to bring it up. You need to be the one to frame it.
Yeah. I think the more and that's a life lesson, man. The more you can just embrace like who you are, what your background is, you disarm other people from using it against you, which is, I think, and like Sarah said, it's you creating your own narrative. You can spin anything to be positive. Things just happen, right? Like the way that you choose to react to them, the way that you choose to let them impact you is all up to you. And you can either hold on to those things or you can just let go.
All right, we got another question. Jordan, do you have a list of really effective job boards for those of us who would like to do part-time, freelance, or contract work?
I do. So what we're going to do, I'm going to drop this link in here. This is the remotejobcoach.com/appsumo. So if you really enjoyed this particular talk, my call to action to you is go there and sign up. I have an email newsletter that I'll send you. The first thing I promise to send you is a list of over 1,000 different remote companies that are hiring. For any other specific things, if someone is looking for, I'm not sure who asked that, someone, Gringotts Financial. I'm assuming that's maybe not your full name, but a nickname there. Feel free to send me an email in response to that particular thing, and I'll go ahead and send you like a link to that specific list of job boards, or I can send you that resource. And yeah, anybody who wants to be in communication, the link's in the chat.
Oh, you just sent it to just panelists. Here, I can.
Oh, okay. Oh, so everything that I've been putting in there has been only to you and me.
Here, I'll copy and post it for everybody. So it is coming up.
Someone asked me at the beginning if I have any kids, and so that means I responded only to you and saying that I don't think I do. Not that I'm aware of.
Can everybody see the link now? That should be in the chat. You got it? Okay, cool. Jordan, this was awesome. Thank you so much for coming on and packing this with value. And everybody go check out that link because this is really great stuff. I think it's going to help a lot of people. What's kind of that one thing you want to leave people on? What's the one thing that they can do today to start setting themselves up for more remote work?
Yeah, I think using the smallest, I'm always a big fan of like, what's the minimum effective dose? Like what's the smallest thing you can do that's going to get you some momentum? if it is reaching out to a job coach like myself to help you in this kind of process, awesome. Reach out to me. I'm happy to send emails back and forth. I have an entire program that I take people through this process. It's a mentorship program, so it's not cheap. It's not something that should be for someone who's not committed, but I also have a ton of free resources too. So just start like looking into what is really going to be right for you. Take the small step today of committing to the fact that you actually want this, and at least figuring out like, can you commit to this or not? And if you are committed, make it happen. And there is no better time than to look for a remote job search now, because what's going to happen is that this COVID thing, again, this is spinning positives, right? This COVID thing is actually going to lead to the biggest boom of remote work and hiring that we've ever seen. Guarantee you that. And if you want to look back on this in a couple of years and look at this point, and maybe I'm wrong, I don't think I am, but yeah, you can call me out. But already we're seeing the biggest remote work experiment worldwide, and it's only going to continue. It's only going to continue to prove that this is the way of future of work. So get in touch with me. Find other resources online. There's just a ton. So yeah, that's what I would say. And if I haven't answered your question, send me an email, because I think, we're kind of wrapping up here. But you can send me an email direct. Go to the site here again. I'll put it if it hasn't been seen, and you can send me an email there.
Awesome. Jordan, thank you so much. You are a master at your craft for remote work, and everybody check out that website. There's a lot of value there. Jordan's awesome at this. And yeah, thank you all for coming on. Keep us posted on as you guys go about your remote searches. Let us know in the comments. Email Jordan directly. Let him know what kind of value he's delivered for you guys. And I will be uploading the replay later today. So I know there was a ton in here, so you can go back. You can check it out there. Jordan, thank you once again. Really appreciate you coming on, and let's definitely stay in touch. Let's talk soon.
And huge thanks to AppSumo. AppSumo is a fucking amazing site. It's like a kid in a candy store for anybody who's a small business, or anybody who uses software at all, which is all of us. I have thoroughly enjoyed and benefited from AppSumo so much. So I want to thank you, Chris, for having me on. I want to thank AppSumo. I hope that you can relay this message. Love Noah as well, and getting to know him through the years. So thank you so much, man.
Awesome,
Appreciate you.
Appreciate it. All right. Take care, everybody. Take care, Jordan. Talk soon. Bye-bye.